Hello and welcome to Top10List.org, where you get a world of knowledge in 10 simple points. On today's episode, we're going to go ahead and talk about top 10 bizarre jobs that were popular in the past. Now, I'm pretty interested to dive into this list myself, so let's start at number 10 with gong farmer. A gong farmer's job was to collect human poop from sewages all over the town in England. His working hours began at 9 p.m. and ended at 5 a.m. because he could only work after nightfall and before sunrise. Number 9. The king's personal servant. The groom of the stool was basically a servant employed by the king. His job was to clean his anus after he was done defecating. It was a highly sought after job at the time because it meant that the servant would get the king's undivided attention several times during the day. Way to get some policies passed. And number 8 is whipping boy. This job existed during the 1600s when it was believed that princes could not be disciplined by anybody but the king. This made it very difficult for tutors to control them. Therefore, a whipping boy was employed who would be punished if the prince did not follow orders or if he misbehaved. That had to suck. At number 7, we have fullers. To make woolen clothes, it is important to carry out a process called fulling so that impurities can be removed from the cloth and volume can be added to it. In the past, this process required the use of urine, and the fullers were made to stand in large tubs which contained the cloth immersed in pee. Number 6 is a resurrectionist. Medical schools were doing very well during the 1800s in Europe, which led to the development of an industry that involved the theft of dead bodies. The resurrectionist's job was to steal these bodies from graveyards and ship them off to the school to be used as cadavers. Number 5, the man who whipped dogs. Many people walked into church with their dogs during the 16th century in Europe. A dog whipper's job was to get rid of these dogs if they created a commotion during the service on church grounds. They would do so with the help of whippers or wooden tongs. Number 4 is the doctor with toads. A skin disease was treated by doctors using toads at the time. They placed the amphibian or its leg in a cloth bag, after which it was tied around the patient's neck. The doctors were required to gather a good selection of toads, and those who used just the legs would chop them off and collect those as well. Number 3, the human alarm clock. A knocker-up was basically a walking, talking human alarm clock. This job was popular at the time when alarm clocks were either unreliable or unheard of. A knocker-up would poke sleeping people with bamboo sticks if they were too high up in a building, and was allowed to leave only when he was sure that their client was up and about. Number 2, mudlarks and toshers. Toshers were those people who swam and picked through sewers in the hope of finding something valuable that they could sell to make some money. The mudlarks, on the other hand, picked through the banks of rivers, which meant that they came across dead bodies quite often. Last but not least on the list is the court jester. The court jester was that person who was employed by the royal family, and his job was to make sure that the king did not get bored. He would insult him and not get into trouble, unless of course the king did not find the joke too funny. The private comedian would therefore live in fear. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Top 10 for bizarre jobs that were popular in the past. Kind of glad we don't have these careers today. If you enjoyed this list, go ahead and click subscribe and join us again for another edition of Top 10 List.